Little did I know that while Gordon and I were having coffee, my son was lost in the woods. The night before, my wife had called Warren over because something was beating on the back door. Warren described the scene like this. He said it was a struggle to stay standing, like a force was pulling it back away from the house, and that it would eventually be pulled back to the woods. It would get a running start, and you could see it struggling to move forward like it was fighting an invisible wind. He said it was crazy, and at first he was afraid looking at this 7-foot-tall creature. When the fear hit him, he decided that he was not going to give in. He asked my wife for the shotgun, loaded it, opened the back door to go out. And as he crossed the threshold, he felt what was like an invisible giant hand on his chest holding him back. He pressed forward and was pushed back, and the door closed on its own. Now, he and my wife stood there looking as this thing struggled and was forced right back to the edge of the wood line. It was like it was being held there, and then the door opened on its own. Now, to be clear, I have a giant sliding glass door. This door slides open on its own, and Warren said in that moment this rage came over him. It was like he was soaked in anger. It was in his bones, in his chest. His feet were burning. And he just ran out the door, screaming, ran as fast as he could, raised that shotgun, and started shooting. When the first shot hit, a chunk of flesh flew off its shoulder, and he said this look of fear came across its face like it didn't expect to be hurt. So he shot again, this time in the leg, and the entire leg flies off and it falls to the ground and starts to crawl away. Warren said all he saw in that moment was red in his peripherals, like he was looking through goggles with red paint on them. He said it was dark back there, but he could clearly see this thing, and he shot it in the back, exploding pieces of it all over the place, and it was still moving. He fired again, hitting it in the head, and then it stops, turns, starts to walk back to the house, and he sees out of the corner of his eye the Indian that I had been seeing, and he says this anger wells up again inside of him, and he says, "I rebuke you, wicked spirit. In the name of Jesus Christ, our lives are not for your entertainment," and it turns into a ball of light and folds in on itself. Then he goes back inside, and the second he crosses the threshold, all the anger is gone, but his body feels like it's been connected to a 9,000-watt generator, and he knew he was not sleeping that night. The house settled down, and when the sun comes up, he falls asleep on the sofa, only to be awakened by my wife panicking at 8:15, asking where my son is. Stop, pause, I want you to realize something. I have not mentioned the name of my wife or my son. That is done intentionally, and I think I should warn you, starting at this moment. I have watched how people behave in this field, the creators, some of the listeners. Their immoral behavior, the downright devilish acts that you people, talking to the ones who behave that way, that behavior is appalling. So, I will say this to you right now, you may be able to find where we are and you have free will to come. However, if any of you show up, or talk about my family, or attack us in any way, especially if you leave where you are to come here, I will view it as God's judgment against you. I will take your life and send you to meet him, because in my mind, he brought you here for judgment. Back to the story, my wife is in a full panic, and Warren is awakened to her screaming for my son. When his eyesight clears up, he notices that the back door is open. She explains to him that when she woke up and went to his room, he was not there. When she came down, the door was open. However, it wasn't wide open. It was slid just enough for a child to get out. Now, mind you, I have no clue what is going on, and there is no way to reach me. So Warren and my wife venture into the woods. This was my wife's first time being in the woods, something I didn't let her do. The Bible says we as men are to cover and protect our wives. Under the circumstances, she and I had an agreement the only time she was ever to go into those woods was if it was an extreme emergency, and this qualified as such. She told me that the second she stepped foot into the woods, she heard grunting like things were talking to each other, things she could not see, and it was terrifying. But she was not leaving our son in the woods alone. The two of them walked for 20 minutes, calling his name, gripped in panic before she remembered something that Liz told her. Liz said that the love of a wife and a mother conquers all things, and that love covers a multitude of sins. So she stopped, took her shoes off, and stood still, Warren was still in a full panic, and she prayed, saying, "Father, I'm not sure what happened to my son, where he is, or if something has taken him, but I trust you fully. I trust your love for me and our family. So I will not be brought into doubt about his safety. I refuse to be brought into fear. Father, I ask, according to your word, where you say to make our petitions and requests known to the Lord. Father, I ask that you have these woods return my son safely to us." She said it was right then and there, with their eyes closed. She could see him walking with this tall man, 12 feet tall. She knew in that moment it was an angel with him. The man looked at her, and his eyes shined like fire, raised his hand and motioned for her to come. So she walked, and as she was walking, Warren was freaking out. "Where are you going? We need to go this way." She calmly looked at him and said, "He is fine, Warren, and he is this way." They walked for another 300 yards and saw him standing there, talking to what looked like a tree. I mean, he was having a full-on conversation with this tree, asking, "So, how long have you been here?" When he spotted his mom, he took off running. Warren told me they ran to him, and when he looked back up, the tree that he was talking to was not there. He said it freaked him all the way out. When they got him back to the house, nothing was wrong with him, not even a scratch, and he just told them about the adventure he had in the woods. Earlier, he thought he heard his mom calling him to come outside, so he went. Then he heard her voice in the woods, so he went. But once he got in the woods, this tall man stopped him. He went on to describe this man as having pretty eyes, and that the man told him it was not his mother. But he did not listen, so he kept walking, and the man followed him. He said he got to where the creek is, and then the voice calling him changed. He said it sounded scary, so he started to run. And the man told him not to run, just walk with him, and he would protect him, so he walked with him, and the voice went away, and they talked about the woods. Then he excitedly said, "He showed me that there are monkeys in the woods, Mom." Well, he showed me the young ones. They are big, but are babies. They are not human, but they are not bad. He told me that the young ones know me and watch me when I go outside. Then he asked if I wanted to see something cool. I told him yes, and he made a tree open its eyes. Excitedly, he said, "Mom, do you know that trees can sing and that the grass can sing?" It was amazing. They all started to sing. Then he told me you were looking for me and that you were afraid and worried and that we needed to walk back, but we were far away and he would get us back fast. I was talking to him, then looked over, and there you were. My son goes on to tell my wife how much he loved her, and the entire time, according to Warren, he was sitting there with his head about to explode. So when I finally got home, this is the story that I was met with. Part of me was angry, but the other part of me was so grateful that my son was okay. When I asked him the man's name, he said that he didn't have a name. He told him to call him a servant. Then he says, "Daddy, what's a servant? Is it a slave?" "No, son, not this guy. He was no slave. He was an angel." The look that came across my son's face was priceless. Over the next few days, I would catch him talking to himself, or so I thought, and when I asked, he said he was talking to the servant. I wanted to make sure that it was not a wicked spirit or something trying to deceive my son. So I turned on some of that old-school gospel music that Liz used to play, turned it up real loud, and my son starts dancing around the house and clapping. And I ask what he is doing, and he says, "Servant and him are dancing." I turn off the music, leave the room, and come back, and he is still dancing. And I say, "Son, the music is off." And he says, "No, it's not. I can hear it, and the servant wants you to know that he understands why you put it on and that you should play it outside sometimes and see what happens." In that moment, I was thrown aback, but I decided to try it. I took the speaker. Back then, they had these thin wires, and carried it outside and turned on the gospel music and just played it and came inside. Went to the bathroom. Was talking about just a quick glimpse. Went to the bathroom. When I came back out, I got a glimpse of the man he was talking about, just a quick glimpse, and it freaked me out because he was looking at me, smiling, and he looked like a grown-up version of my son, except he was the perfect specimen, slender but muscular. It was amazing. This was the start of my son having encounters in the woods and the beginning of the woods, keying in and focusing on him. Warren calls it the targeting of the next generation. He took it personally, remembering the things he experienced when he was a little boy. This only brought my two sons closer, and indeed they would need to be close because I was about to go through a bout with sickness.